Okay, let's continue with topic 7, part 1. I'll just remove my headset. Okay, so now that we understand what's in blood, we can look at some parts of blood in a little bit more detail. Erythrocytes. Can you see how they are shaped like a disc? They are skinnier in the middle than they are on the outside. And red blood cells, or erythrocytes, don't have a nucleus and do not have any organelles. So that means that they can't repair themselves. And erythrocytes are full of hemoglobin. So red blood cells are full of hemoglobin. Here is another picture showing the red blood cells, their shape, and then that's the capillary. And we also saw a video of the red blood cells going through the capillary. So what is the job of the red blood cell, or erythrocyte, I should actually call them? The main job of an erythrocyte is to transport oxygen to tissues and carbon dioxide to the lungs. So the way that the red blood cell is shaped, go back a slide, it increases the surface area for gas exchange. So its job is to carry oxygen around and also carry oxygen from the lungs to the tissues and carry carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs. So we're going to have a look at how oxygen is transported later, but now let's just look at the hemoglobin molecule. So look at it here. Erythrocytes are full of hemoglobin. Now hemoglobin is a protein, and what happens is that we have oxygen, the oxygen molecule, it binds to this hemoglobin molecule. So hemoglobin is a protein, but it also has other bits associated with it. So the oxygen binds to this hemoglobin molecule. Let's have a look at the structure of hemoglobin in a little bit more detail. Hemoglobin, like I said, is a protein, and it's made up of 4 chains of amino acids. The purple ones are identical. We have 2 of those. And the gold ones are identical. We also have 2 of those. So we have a total of 4 protein chains. In the middle of each protein chain, we have something called a heme group. And this is what the heme group looks like. And in the middle of the heme group, look at this. What's Fe? Fe is iron. That's where the oxygen molecule binds. The oxygen molecule sticks to this iron molecule. So, how many oxygen molecules can one hemoglobin carry? 1, 2, 3, 4. So, let's just get my highlighter for this part. So when we look at your blood, what you can do is that you can just draw blood from a person and then you can spin it in a centrifuge. And what that gives you is the heavy bits on the bottom and the light bits on the top. and you can calculate something called the hematocrit. The hematocrit just means how much of your blood as a percentage is formed elements. So remember what formed elements were? Formed elements were erythrocytes, leukocytes, and platelets, which are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So there's a difference between in hematocrit for men and women, okay? And these are just a few different measures. We don't want you to memorize all these numbers. Just be aware of what hematocrit is. And and then so here are where all of the red blood cells sit. Then you've got the leukocytes and platelets. They are the second heaviest, and then the lightest part of your blood will be your plasma. Just be aware of what that is, and it's changing. It's different for men and women. All right, so how is an erythrocyte born? Where does it come from? How does it get into our blood? So our blood cells, our erythrocytes, actually come from our red bone marrow. So here is a picture of a bone showing, look, the red bone marrow. Because we actually have two types of bone marrow. We have red and yellow. Red bone marrow gives us our blood cells, and yellow is just fat. So our red blood cells are born in the red bone marrow. You don't find red bone marrow everywhere, only in some bones. And the red bone marrow is very, very busy. It makes so many cells every day for you. Okay? Like I said before, red blood cells don't have a nucleus, so they can't repair themselves. So when we make a red blood cell and it gets spat out into our blood supply, it only lasts a short time. It only lasts about that amount of days. So we're always making red blood cells, and we're always disposing of them. We're making them and we're losing them. So how quickly we make red blood cells is controlled by a hormone, and that hormone is called erythropoietin. And later on, we'll tell you how that is released or conditions where that is released. Okay. So normally we make red blood cells and we spit them out into our circulation to recoup the ones that we're losing. But this hormone, when it's released, it makes us make more. Right, so who releases this hormone? The kidney does. And under conditions where, you don't have a lot of oxygen in the blood, it will kick off this hormone. So we'll come back to this hormone later. Just be aware of that, this hormone tells the red bone marrow to spit out more red blood cells for us. It's released by the kidney. All right, so after a red blood cell is born, it goes from the red bone marrow into our systemic blood supply, and then they go around and around and around and around for 120 days doing their job. And then, because they can't repair themselves, they start to get a bit ratty. So their plasma membrane starts to kind of break and it's just, they're just losing their quality. So what happens is that we recycle some parts of the red blood cell, and some parts we actually get rid of. So what do we get rid of and what do we recycle? So the first thing that we do is we grab the hemoglobin. So here is our old red blood cell that has worked and worked and worked, and now it's time for it to go. We grab the hemoglobin and we break it up into the amino acid chains and the heme group. The amino acids go back into the blood and we reuse those to make new proteins. The heme we break up, we take off the iron molecule and we reuse that too. So that's quite handy. We use it to make new red blood cells. So we recycle the amino acids, we recycle the iron. The only bit that we throw out is the bit left over here, which is in this part of the heme. That gets converted to bilirubin, and that eventually ends up going out in your feces. All right, that is eliminated from the body. So as you can see, some parts we recycle and some parts we are waste products. All right, let's have a look at a clinical link. What is polycythemia? It's too many red blood cells in your blood. So remember, if you have too much stuff dissolved in your blood, it's going to make your blood thicker and more viscous. So it's not going to flow as well. So your blood is going to be sluggish. And look at this. Look at the effects of that on a person. Anemia is a problem with the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. And that can be a problem related to a few things. So anemia is you have a problem with oxygen transport. Now that can be because you don't have enough red blood cells, or you have enough red blood cells but you don't have enough hemoglobin. It could be a number of things, but the problem is you have a problem with oxygen transport. And there's a few reasons why someone can get anemia. Maybe their bone marrow is not spitting out red blood cells like it should. You may be losing too many red blood cells for some reason. You don't have enough iron. We need iron to make the red blood cells. B12 as well is required for the creation of red blood cells. Or you do make hemoglobin, but the hemoglobin that you make is not normal. Okay? So that is just anemia. Just think of it as there's a problem with oxygen transport, and it could be for a variety of reasons. So sickle cell disease is where you are making hemoglobin, but the hemoglobin that you make is not normal. So here is your normal hemoglobin, and your red blood cell is the normal, correct shape. If your hemoglobin is abnormal, it makes your red blood cell go this funny, weird sickle cell shape. The problem with that is that these abnormal red blood cells then get stuck in little blood vessels, and that causes a problem. It stops blood flow. Okay? So this is a genetic disorder, and it's got to do with the fact that the hemoglobin that you're making is not right. It's the wrong shape. Okay. I think that's it.